Today we're here with Roque Castro and Chris O'Connor of Elysium Technology. And to get into it, why don't you guys start off by telling us just what exactly are you guys doing at Elysium?
Yeah, sure. So Elysium is a company that's been in traditional finance for close to 20 years now. It's a rich background on that front. We started as a global macro discretionary fund trading ourselves. And so as part of that, we built a nice suite of technology to run that business. And so then when we wound the fund down, we didn't want to see that go to waste. So we pivoted over to a technology group and started servicing clients in sort of a bespoke technology consulting fashion, and saw the evolution of prime brokerage and sort of found a nice niche in the FX markets, servicing prime brokers, broker dealers, and really just solving all of their back middle office problems and helping them scale. And so the evolution of Elysium has been, from being on the buy side through to technology provider, and helping clients solve unique problems. And so that brought us to where we are today, which is more of a software as a service platform. And we still service our FX groups. They're an important sort of aspect of our business. But with the introduction of digital assets and the evolution of finance on that side of things, we've really seen an opportunity to take all of the knowledge and tools that we've built over the years and apply that to this new growing ecosystem. And so it's been a fun journey. We joined in 2018 and have seen quite a bit along that route. And we're now seeing a lot of our FX customers port over, which is exciting.
Very cool. So I guess the problem you guys are really working on is to kind of summarize is trade settlement, correct?
That's one of the key problems that we're solving for. There's a whole slew of other use cases that we have, but we really are excited about this opportunity that we've identified in pounding pavement for the last couple of years, talking to every trading firm that we can get in front of and understanding the pain points that they've got. And what we realized are that what institutional crypto, especially in OTC crypto, are experiencing now are deja vu of the world we helped pioneer and grew up in over the last 20 years in FX. So we're experts in this, and we said, hey, we've got a solution. But yeah, that's kind of the core offering we've got now. It's through a single platform. We call it Match Hub, that is focused on orchestrating and optimizing the settlement and the payments on the ecosystem amongst all of our clients.
That's really cool.
Got it.
I'm assuming, obviously your experience in the back end of what you've experienced, there's a lot of fragmentation in technology in a traditional sense, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think the fragmentation is a big part of running a trading organization, right? So if you're getting your trading organization set up, and you could be coming from a large institution with a lot of baggage of old technology systems, or you could be a smaller firm that's starting up and building out. But in any of those cases, you need connectivity to the fragmented market. You need to automate your workflows to control your operations, your cost, your risk, and all of those things. And then as you expand into the different types of workflows, you need credit margin management and reconciliation on those independent systems so that you can rely on the data that you're running your business off of. That was a big piece of our history. Our workflow is, the first thing that we figure out with clients is we build a business topography map to understand the data flows. Because if you can understand those data flows, then you can help identify areas where the software can provide the most value and figure out how you reconcile those systems and how you run all of your business off of sort of a single source of truth.
Yeah. Now, is that considered more middle back office? Is that what you guys are kind of middle layer?
Yeah. Yep. So we don't do anything on the execution side of things. We've stayed out of that arms race on purpose. There are a lot of folks that do that very well. We're a small team that is growing after an acquisition from Laser Digital. And so in terms of sort of our growth path on that front, we focus on sort of where our expertise is on that back middle office. And it's not the most exciting for most trading firms. But once you start talking about the problems that they're having, that all of these organizations are having, whether you're in the front office trading side of things, or whether you're credit or risk or operations, everybody gets excited about trying to make their daily lives better. And so that's where our focus has been. And so generally we focus on getting all of that sorted for you so that you can streamline your day-to-day and have control of your business.
Yeah. And one of the things I think is interesting talking to you guys, before this call, you guys kind of talked about the evolution of, you started as a fund. So talk to us about that evolution. So you started with the fund. What were the problems that you saw that you guys really needed to solve for here?
Yeah, and so our founders of the fund had a very keen focus to keep operations lean. So they were a smaller group. They wanted lean ops. They wanted to make sure that they didn't have to inherit all of those problems that they had seen at the larger banking institutions that they ran. And they came up from O'Connor and Swiss Bank and UBS, and so they were very well versed in that area. And so the focus was how do you automate your workflows? How do you have a lean operations team, and how do you create that single source of data? And so we were trading global macro discretionary fund, trading futures, options, commodities, interest rates, all of those things. And we were actually UBS's second prime brokerage customer. So coming from that world, we focused a lot on reconciliation. And actually, I came into Elysium at the fund sort of at the start of my career. I was clerking for the traders. I was pulling up 5 or 6 screens. I was reconciling data. I was generating fund admin reports. I was sending all of that out. And so it's been a good, our core team has stuck together for, since the fund until today, which is a testament to, our ability to work together and service our customers. And so along those lines, we've learned so much about sort of how we want to build a business. How do you build a platform that solves these problems? And how do you optimize all of those issues that you're having around out trades, reconciliation, the ability to provide your tear sheets very quickly? All of those things on that front are sort of built into the DNA of the system.
And Mike, what I would add to your question is very grassroots approach of we're practitioners first and users of our own software to iron out the kinks, understand really the points of friction. And what I mentioned earlier, this kind of being deja vu, what Chris is describing is the world that he lived and operated in 18 years ago. Fast forward, a lot of these digital asset startups, especially the crypto native shops that are trying to attract institutional flow and institutional dollars, they don't have operations like they have operations of what Chris is describing. They don't understand this world of centralized enterprise risk management, enterprise operational type tools. So for us, it's just there's a wild world of opportunity for us to really tackle and become leaders in the space.
Yeah, that's really interesting, guys. I mean, obviously, you can probably give us a good backdrop on the evolution of crypto trading too, just given where things are happening, what players were in the space even 5 years ago, and what's happened now. So that's definitely love to hear you guys' thoughts even more on that.
Yeah, and so that evolution in terms of the scaling of that industry, we started when we jumped into it in 2018. What we did was we built a bank and an exchange, and the connectivity between those bank and the exchange, and it separated custody and execution. And that actually was a really good concept that, had it taken off with that customer of ours that we built, it would have been good for the industry. That one didn't end up working out for them. And so, we kept sort of the IP of building that project and scaling it out. And then, the consolidation around exchanges is very much a sort of a retail first approach, which is not different from the FX markets in terms of structure. One of the main things that we have that we focus on and that we think about is, what does the market structure look like? Is it different from traditional finance? And the underlying technology is certainly, and there's benefits and things that have moved forward. But if you're running a trading operation, you have the same problems, whether it's in the old world or the new world on that front. And so we focused a lot on trying to solve those issues. And in terms of exchanges and the like, post FTX, even as recently as Bybit, the conversation of separating custody from execution and single stack is something that, with regulatory changes, is making a big difference here.
Skylar, I'd say in 2018, when we were working on that project that Chris was talking about, we said, let's really start to understand this digital asset, this crypto world. So we started picking up the phone and talking to friends and family that were starting to dabble in this industry. And they'd say, oh yeah, there's this crypto hedge fund in Midtown. You should go check out, guys. So we would go hop on the train, go to some dude's apartment, and it would be 3 guys in hoodies trading a couple $1 million of capital, mostly on phones, on their, on apps. And this blew our minds in that, how can this be credible? How can this be something that's, again, going to attract the pension funds, attract the institutional flow? So the world has certainly advanced. You had a lot of the first movers and the big market makers, the Wintermutes, the DRWs, the Jane Streets, the Galaxies. There's this interesting evolution too that we're seeing, and Chris really likes to highlight internally. A lot of these shops are, whether they admit it or not, they're at a point of crisis in their ability to scale, and that's another point of opportunity for us in that we can help them scale. It's getting their back office under control and completely retooled with the right tools to be more efficient. But that's what we're seeing, that a lot of those first movers, the world was consolidated, and the majority of the volumes came from roughly a dozen names, and they're all names we're very familiar with. A couple of them have certainly blown up, but now we've got all the second movers and the third wave coming in, and that's really in more on the vanilla spot, OTC spot crypto products. We're not even talking about a lot of the derivative and the real funky DeFi flavors of crypto.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting, right, Roque? When you think about like the traditional spaces of what's considered institutional is spreadsheets still in 2025, right? Going to a workflow from a post-trade settlement point of view.
Our view is that's okay, right? A lot of these shops that were moving fast on this front were moving quickly because the market was developing so quickly, right? So it's not that some of these larger shops didn't know what they were doing, but they were doing whatever they could to get live and generate trading and doing things on that front. So most of the time we're not met with resistance when we come in and sort of say, these are the things that you can use. That they all know that they should be doing this, should be migrating to that. And the folks that have spent time doing it have built these independent pods, right? So if we pivot for a moment to the settlement aspect and what that process looks like, what you ended up with from all of these companies of smart people who are moving forward, building out their own internal systems, is a lack of standardization with how these people interact. The lack of a value date in a crypto native sort of field and tracking that and not knowing when you're going to exchange assets, because it was all happening on exchanges, which was instant. The minute that a market became available off chain, you need these extra things. You need the extra coordination around how you're going to process your settlements. When are you going to do that? And you ended up with a lot of different groups that had different settlement windows, different limitations, but you're not going to say, no, let's not trade because of the operational limitations. And so that's what we're really trying to do, is build a bit of standardization in the market so that when two counterparties meet and they want to be able to trade, they can do so quickly. And there's not a number of conversations around how we're going to get how we're going to settle these trades. It's all well understood, and it all conforms to something that helps both businesses scale, helps the ecosystem grow, allows for the existing players to continue trading, and allows for institutions to come in and provide more liquidity.
One thing I think would be good to jump into is talk to us about like who are the users of your products. I would imagine, like you've talked about here, some like exchanges, maybe some OTC desks. Are other like our funds and stuff using it? Kind of give us the whole picture.
Yeah, so we have a number of segments that we service. The short answer is anyone that trades OTC crypto is a potential consumer of Elysium solutions. But our core focus right now are on digital asset broker-dealers, custodians, so crypto custodians, ECNs. We're really excited about the growth of the ECN space, and we have some amazing partners that we worked with in that world. And then a lot of the market makers. The buy side certainly is on the roadmap. We have we just started to scrape the tip of the iceberg within the asset management buy side community. So really our foray into buy side world is let's tackle their LPs first and get their LP operations under control, and then they can start to really distribute us into who their counterparties are. So we've got some select users of Matchup that are really starting to distribute us into their end counterparty and user base.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd add there that matchup is very much a network effect. You're reconciling these independent OTC systems, but building a network is extremely difficult in any industry that you're trying to deal with, because you're stuck with that chicken and egg problem. It's not valuable until the network is there, and it's hard to get first movers because the value is not there yet. So when we were evaluating how we wanted to launch Matchup, how we wanted to build Matchup, it was paramount that we were able to service these providers individually so that they could use the platform on their own. A custodian can log in, use the platform, manage settlements between their customers. They can manage credit. If they want to extend credit lines to them, they can calculate margin limits like that. So they don't need the network per se to take advantage of it. And so that's been a core focus of ours, is not an if you build it, they will come, but service each of the individual groups to provide value. If you're a customer of Elysium, we can provide value to you, whether or not we have 100 different customers on the back end that are feeding that network. And so that network effect will bolster on the back end and ultimately help drive the ecosystem forward. But it's not a focus of MatchHub as sort of a core piece, even though that's going to provide some exponential benefit to the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. And I guess this would be a good time to talk about, tell us like what exactly is MatchHub?
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say it's a post-trade matching and reconciliation engine at the core of it. It is based upon in a perfect setup. It's based upon a dual reporting system. So we've approached it, in our backgrounds lend itself in that we approach it from a clearing angle, in that trades should be matched and cleared after the fact and not by necessarily taking point of execution as gospel. So this is a post-trade matching and clearing engine, but our clients don't necessarily utilize it as an actual clearing tool. What they're using it for predominantly is to organize all their settlements. So the workflow is we connect via APIs to collect all of their transactions at point of execution, oftentimes from multiple, as Skylar mentioned, fragmented locations. We pull all those trades into the core center of MatchHub. And then from there, we can net down all of their trades into the core tokens and balances that they need in their settlement obligations amongst all their counterparties. And then they can layer that in with all of their settlement windows. Oftentimes it's once a day, or when a certain limit gets hit, or it's the next day. They can configure the rules however they want to manage their actual settlement windows. And then they can click a button in MatchHub and it sends out all of those payment instructions to the various payment rails. And that's, again, where it's flexible. We're agnostic into where we connect into and where we collect information from. We go where our clients tell us that they're executing on and where the settlements need to happen. And then kind of, again, to build upon that fragmented theme, the world prior to MatchHub is typically all of that orchestration of agreeing and affirming the transactions and the settlement balances between counterparties is typically happening between staff in the back office at the two different firms, agreeing upon these balances, typically over email, Slack, Telegram, and often prone to fat finger error, human error. And this really mitigates all of that risk, but it takes the time to do all of that from hours down to theoretically minutes.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was just going to ask about counterparty risk, what your guys' thoughts were about that. So that makes a lot of sense. And then even just from a monitoring standpoint, is there any type of real-time monitoring in the system, given the digital asset class, if you will?
Yeah, so we've got all real-time monitoring on the back end of it. We track stats based on your relationship. So if we're reconciling data from two parties, real-time reconciliation is important, especially in volatile markets, especially in markets where, right now the customers are dealing with out trades at the end of the day in that settlement window, and they're exchanging spreadsheets. And then you've got groups that might not have access to the people who did the trades because you're in a different time zone. And so what we're trying to do is allow for real-time reconciliation of trading activity. And what that lets you do is your middle and back office can resolve these errors before the settlement window. You can, if you have an outage or if you're not agreed with a particular counterpart, then the trade is, unless it's an ECN or an exchange that has a particular matching engine or rules on that front, these OTC bilateral trades need to be agreed by both parties, or there's dispute resolution on the back end of that. And so by reconciling real time, we can fire those alerts and we can create stats based on historical reporting. So if one counterparty generally reports their trades within a minute, but another counterparty continually has trades that don't come in for 10 minutes, you can have different alerting based on both of those things. And your risk officers can take a look at that and say, all right, let's talk to this counterpart. Let's see what they can do. Let's find out why they're not reporting their trades more quickly. And you can really fine tune your pricing to the risk that you have from an operational perspective of an out trade. And so it's been a fun journey to get that all going on that front. And I think for any of the listeners with an FX background, it's very much a Triano workflow, a Netlink workflow on that end. And so it's applying that to the scale to really help propel the digital asset OTC market to the size of the FX OTC market, which is the largest in the world.
And I'll say one thing around counterparty, especially counterparty exposure monitoring. One thing I love about logging into our tools are that I can see at any given point in time what my balances are to any counterparty, what my exposure is to any counterparty balances and obligations for settlement. And we track them since we're collecting at point of execution and building those balances up trade by trade, transaction by transaction. We can see it before it's actually been affirmed or confirmed by a client, by the user. So there is this notion of, and this comes from the clearing world, this notion of the trade life cycle changes legal status at different points along the chain of custody. And we track that whole process from what we like to say from trade to paid. But there's essentially 3 legal statuses that change from point of execution to when that settlement hits your wallet.
Yeah. And to kind of expand on this, so like maybe a real life example. So, somebody's running an OTC desk. Maybe they, borrowed or lent a couple Bitcoin to their counterparties. So the way I would kind of imagine it is it's taking the data from, it could see this on chain. So it could see that it left wallet X, it went to client's wallet Y. Is that correct? And then, kind of square up at the end of the day?
I think we're focused a little bit more on the off-chain activity and reconciling that activity before the movement. So in what, we'd like to think about the authoritative source of data. So the blockchain is the authoritative source. Where the blockchain is telling you those assets exist is where those assets exist. So if you're trading and you're trading on chain for every trade you're doing, then it's less, we can still track the data. We can still pull that in so you can see your counterparty risk and we can still provide that. But then the matching and the netting function is for that off chain. So that would be in your case, say you go through that trade and you're agreeing to that on Telegram, or you're printing a fax to sign over and send, or whatever it might be in terms of executing that bespoke OTC deal. On that front, you still want to make sure both parties agree. So when both of those parties enter that into their systems, their independent systems that they're using to run their own businesses, that's when they send that data to match up to make sure that they agree. Because the trade could have been done properly, everybody agrees to it, but there could have been an error entering that into both of your systems. And so if you're trying to run your trading operations off of a system that has bad data, you want to know, because you're going to make decisions on that data. You're going to try and, whether you're plugging in auto hedging or whatever it might be to pull that data, you want to make sure that you're relying on accurate reconciled data. And the sooner that you reconcile that data in the point of the life cycle, the quicker you can identify out trades and the better decisions your organization can make. And you can avoid losing funds or making bad trading decisions.
I hope nobody in crypto is still faxing.
No, that's not. I'm back in my original clerking days.
Well,
here.
I tell you what, guys, faxing is still alive and well in 2025. I'll just tell you that.
As are pagers.
As our pagers. That's right.
Yes.
Curious on the integration side, that always gets asked from a technology point of view. You guys have a SaaS platform. So what does that integration process look like at a high level?
Yeah, so from the integrations, we've got a strong background of integrations coming from the FX. It's a lot of venues on the FX OTC space, a lot of connectivities. We've integrated over 150 platforms into our stack over the years. And so from an integration perspective, a standard API docs for that, figuring out who wants to do the work to get the integration in, and then just trying to simplify it so that people are not spending a lot of time setting up mapping configurations and managing it that way. So, with our integration with a group like Fireblocks, when you set up the whitelisted wallets and Fireblocks, those get pulled into the system based on the structure there. So there's no mapping to set up other than linking your sort of setups on that front. So we try and make it as easy as possible for groups to integrate to the system. And every integration looks slightly different depending on the protocols and then the type of workflow that we're doing. But we try and keep it as simple as possible. It's a very light lift for folks to start reporting trades into us. We've had groups within 3 hours be able to report the trades in because the trade reporting pieces are so standard.
Makes sense. Very cool.
We've also noticed over the years there tends to be a little bit of a herd mentality where it's sort of the flavor of the month in terms of which platforms or which venues we're seeing. So we kind of know where either a conference or the marketing budget's gone. We're like, oh, we're getting a lot of requests to integrate to this particular platform or venue. Certainly in crypto, there is also a lack of standardization. So in traditional finance, everything protocol-wise is fixed-based. We're starting to see more and more fixed-based APIs, but they tend to be in digital assets. Early days, they tend to be all over the place and very, the lack of documentation, ease of integration from a lot of the crypto native shops. Early days for post trade, were a struggle.
Yeah. Talk to us. How have you guys seen the landscape change over the years in terms of maybe prime brokerage with digital assets?
Yeah, so prime brokerage is a core functionality of our system. We actually in one of our sort of sister systems, we call it RiskDB. That really does support a full prime brokerage portal for FX. And so in the digital space, you've got, I think the understanding or the terminology around prime brokerage is a little bit different. It had primarily been access to venues, right? So these groups would integrate to all of these venues. They'd sponsor your access to these venues. And it was really just about execution and less about the clearing side of that. And so enter Hidden Road as one of the main sort of official PBs in that spot. Extending credit and the growth of that is a big part of that evolution. And so they're the first people to do that, but there's not a whole lot of options other than Hidden Road if you're looking for credit and leverage and things like that. We think that that's going to change as the market evolves, as institutions get involved. Institutions very much need the segregation of the stack. So not a vertical stack where you're dealing with trading, custody, all of that in one piece. That's very much a retail focused thing. And it makes sense for it to be that way to a certain degree because people want to log in and have all of their workflows in one spot. But when you're dealing with the institutions, they very much expect sort of individual segregation of duties. They want to manage risk that way. And so as more institutions are entering, they're all familiar with prime brokerage. Some of the newer people who are getting into it are going to be surprised that it doesn't exist the way that their existing businesses can trade. So we're seeing a lot of traction from some of the banks who have had working groups for years, right? I think we've all heard that institutions were coming and we're seeing a lot more groups enter the market, but I think the regulatory changes are allowing for the larger banks to get in. And we are excited about where prime brokerage will go in the future for digital assets. And Matchup, we hope for it to be a key component in supporting that ecosystem.
Yeah.
We're getting more calls coming from folks that would never have considered or that we never would have considered dabbling in the prime brokerage and prime services world now saying, hang on, I can really expand into prime services, prime brokerage. So we're really excited about that adoption that is happening. We're seeing it firsthand. And we need to diversify the participants in the space. Again, I think in the momentum certainly here in the U.S. has shifted in favor of that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
Going through the process, I mean, when you're talking to a lot of folks, I'm sure this has come up. With key management, holding on to private keys. Do you guys do that? What does that process look like?
Yeah, we don't hold on to any keys in MatchHub. The reason is that we're not trying to be a custodian. We're trying to be custody agnostic on that front. And frankly, there are the nuances of doing that properly are difficult. And there's a large market, and it's a saturated market in terms of being able to interact with the blockchain on that front. So we sit one step back where we'll initiate payments via APIs to these groups. Well, we will orchestrate those payments, more saying, you queue it up, but then it hits your phone and then you release it via the Fireblocks API, or you go onto the portal, or you're using your own keys to release it from that perspective. But we report the movements in batches to help streamline multiple settlements at a time. But we don't actually sign anything. We don't hold any keys. And that was a strategic decision on our spot to find the right spot for MatchHub and for our software to fit.
That makes sense. Almost like a dual control process without being in the loop there.
That's right. And the clients really appreciate that aspect of having full control there, and they still want to be able to have that extra check.
Yeah, makes sense.
Any other trends that you guys have seen on the institutional side of the business?
I think we're seeing ECNs pop up a lot more. The market today has through all of the major players in terms of the exchanges, just a central limit order book for execution, and you're running into issues along that where it's just one central limit order book. So the retail folks are sitting in the same pool that the HFT folks are sitting in, and if you look back at the other markets or other asset classes, that's not necessarily always allowed on that front. So you've got a situation in which regulators, I think, now giving a closer look as banks are getting in, are going to take a look at that. And so there's a lot of value to an ECN who can manage liquidity better. And so I think we'll see a good movement of the institutions and convergence on ECNs. And obviously, the major exchanges will still have some access from those institutions, but I think you'll get a lot more value out of ECNs in terms of execution on that front, which is why MatchHub and the focus on working with ECNs has been a big part of our roadmap.
The other trend I'd say we're going to start seeing is more leverage being offered, in the credit intermediation. We're going to see probably, the growth of maybe the prime of prime space in digital assets that's not really there today. And like Chris mentioned earlier, we're going to start seeing these sort of pseudo prime brokers look and feel much more like an OTC or a traditional prime broker that TradFi knows.
Yeah, definitely. I could see that continuing to, the market continuing to consolidate. So I definitely think that makes sense. Talk to us about your guys' vision for the product. So what's the roadmap? Where do you guys see this heading in the next, year, 2 years, 5 years?
We're focused on connectivity, automation of workflows, credit and margin, and reconciliation. So as those advance, the different integrating additional products into the workflows. So we recently integrated spot options and options into the workflow to help manage your settlement and your expiration process. And so as the market expands in terms of focusing on different trading products, obviously we'll integrate those trading products to support the business and the growth on that front. But I think near term, 2 to 3 years, as the PB market evolves, a lot more prime brokerage type tooling. And then from there, just product expansion. One thing that I think we haven't mentioned yet is that MatchHub has been live since 2019, servicing the FX market. It supported sort of full FX flows. So, when these institutions start entering the market, trading multiple asset classes, we'd like for MatchHub to support sort of all of those asset classes in terms of, being able to interact with trading with counterparties over a single spot so that you're not dealing with 10, 15 vendors for your different workflows on that front.
Yeah, that makes sense. What are you guys' thoughts as you think about the future and the roadmap? Obviously, this is a big topic. Everybody's talking about AI, generative AI, with workflows and automation. What are you guys thinking about it? And, what are the thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. Top of mind. It's funny. Chris and I were talking about it about 2 hours ago. First of all, we want to stay on the forefront of innovation and capabilities. We actually have an AI expert that is our head of sales, was also one of our developers and lead engineers that we're excited to take. He left Elysium for a while. We tricked him into coming back. Wes Dunlap, give him a shout out. And he's going to bring in some expertise, some domain expertise that we need. But we're going to start by utilizing AI capabilities internally first, our own operations, our monitoring, our client service team. There's a lot of tooling that we can leverage AI for just within our own stack. And then from there, we'll start to blow it out in the products. But yeah, we're already utilizing some of it within, some basic components, our CRM type tools and some of our sales efforts. That's one area that we leverage it for. But certainly we're really proud of the infrastructure we built just to manage our own business. It's something we've always taken pride in our ability to hit above our weight class, and that we actually do the work of what peers of ours that have hundreds of employees are doing, and the magnitude of trades that we process and how we scale out. We have spikes of millions of trade tickets per day come through our stack. So, and that could be just an average day for us with, perhaps in certain time zones, maybe 1.5 headcount, at the helm. So that's really due to our kind of over engineering a lot of our infrastructure, but also building a lot of the monitoring in-house. And yeah, absolutely. It's going to take AI type tools to really help us scale that and make it even more efficient.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I appreciate the thought process around it. You always say you got to eat your own cooking, first before you sell it to your clients.
That's right.
Yeah. As Roque mentioned with Wes, when he left Elysium, he went into the finance world. So he was working at a large bank, sort of running some of their AI initiatives there. And so along those lines, he saw those problems that these institutions are having with AI and how they would handle it. And so, working that back into the platform and that is always going to be a fun road ahead on that part.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Anything more do you guys want to add on like the risk management side of things that we haven't really got into yet?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand or at least highlight that from a risk management perspective, there are a number of different factors that affect your business and how you should think about risk. And so obviously there's market risk, and we track exposures and things of that nature. MatchHub and RiskDB don't focus on the peculiars of sort of risk calculation with VAR and things like that, mostly because everybody has a slightly different model. They want to look at it the way that they want to look at it. And so it's more difficult to fine tune that for a platform. And so from our perspective, from a risk side of things, you have, your market risk, you have your operational risk, your legal risk, your reputational risk, all of these different things, your regulatory risk, all of that is built into the platform to say, if you've got all of the data in one place and you can manage all of that data, how do you expose to the different groups the risk metrics that they need to run the business effectively? So our focus is on risk all the way through from counterparty risk through those others that I mentioned prior.
If you took the letters that Chris just highlighted in the risk components, the acronym that we use internally is McClure. And so that covers those risk components, but we apply those principles and the floor principles to almost every aspect of the feature set and the functionality of all of our systems.
What does the McClure stand for?
It's I was gonna say market, credit, legal, operational, regulatory, and reputational.
Got it. All summed up there. I like that.
Cool.
Any final thoughts here before we wrap it up, guys?
Yeah, I think overall we're really excited about being able to leverage our expertise in the FX space and the TradFi space into this digital asset ecosystem. There's so much exciting progress being made across so many aspects of the industry, from OTC trading spot all the way up to the RWAs and things on that front. And so, we're just excited to find our niche within that industry, expand on that front, and just help a lot of the solve a lot of the problems for our customers as they're looking to grow their businesses, so that we can sort of expand and a rising tide lifts all boats type scenario on that front.
Awesome.
The only thing I'd add there is that for years, I've been asking our team, Chris, having led the engineering and the software team for years, give me a product that I can go out and distribute en masse. And that's what we finally have with Matchup. We really have found our niche. And as Chris said, we still have a long road ahead of us, but we now have a product that is by far our most nimble, fastest to deploy, easiest to deploy, but most targeted for just a specific use case that is much needed in this digital asset industry. So we're fresh off, and we can't wait to show you guys in the near future our latest version. We're fresh off the latest version of Matchup. It's by far our best work. And if you think of us channeling 20 years of our experience into this, this is kind of our life's work going out to the industry.
Yeah,
Amazing.
Appreciate it. Well, really appreciate the time, guys. It's always fun to chat with you guys. So, appreciate you sitting down with us. Where could people go to connect with you guys and learn more about Elysium? And also tell us just, real quick, like what are the types of ideal like clients that you guys want to talk to? Who are the people you want to talk to? And then where could they find you?
Yeah, I'd say LinkedIn is going to be the best place to find us right now. We're kind of in the process of overhauling some of our front end marketing and sales capabilities. Grab us on LinkedIn, and we will absolutely reach out and connect. We are pounding the pavement, hitting events, conferences this year. We love to hear from anyone. So it's right now kind of a three-headed sales monster between Chris, myself, and Wes that are leading the charge, and we're really covering a lot of ground at the moment. But we're really trying to talk to everyone. Ideal customer, broker dealer. It's very active in OTC, crypto, a market maker, any custodian. Again, more finite universe. Prime brokers, more finite universe. But we're really looking for those that are very active in OTC trading.
Very cool.
Awesome. Well, guys, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you again so much for the time. We'll make sure to include all the links down below in the show notes.